Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Bitcoin for Ranchers webinar series. Today marks the second of four webinars offering basic Bitcoin education to bridge the gap between sound health and sound money in the hope for a sound future. Each of these webinars will be no more than 60 minutes long, and that will include a question and answer session at the end. This webinar is being recorded, so just to let all participants know that. For those that didn't make last week's webinar, I'd just like to quickly reintroduce myself and my co-host. I go by Bitcoin Q&A. I'm Head of Support and Education at Foundation Devices, and presenting with me today is Lily, who is also works for Foundation. She is our Head of Business Development. How's it going, Lily?
Hey, Q&A. Doing well. Thank you, guys.
It would appear that the universe is against me today. Sorry about that, guys. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Apologies. Let me reshare my screen. It looks like we're destined to fail today, doesn't it? Can you let me know when you can see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it now.
Perfect. All right. Let me.
Yeah, you're good.
Let me jump back into where we were. So before we get started with today's content, I just think it's worth while to have a quick recap on what we covered in last week's webinar. So last week we covered, Bitcoin basics. So we covered off what Bitcoin is and its importance in today's society. We discussed the various properties of Bitcoin, all of the important ones, namely, to name a few, the 21 million supply hard cap, the fact that it's excellent at sort of the removal of trusted third parties, or the need for trusted third parties. We put some meat on the bones around what it means to be peer-to-peer digital cash, and we demonstrated that Bitcoin is great for unconfiscatable and uncensorable savings and payments. We also compared Bitcoin to gold and to fiat currencies that we all know and use today, and demonstrated again why we think Bitcoin excels in comparison to both of them. Finally, we also covered off acquiring how you guys can acquire some Bitcoin through various methods. We covered off KYC methods, or the traditional methods through sort of a regulated exchange, and then we covered off the no KYC methods such as earning, mining, or buy and offer from a peer-to-peer marketplace. So if you're hearing all those concepts for the first time, I'd urge you to go back and watch that recording from the first week. I think it's a great starter for what we're going to discuss today. So from all those great properties that we discussed last week, and we were waxing lyrical about how great Bitcoin is, there is somewhat of an elephant in the room, shall we say, and that is that all of those great properties of Bitcoin that we discussed last week are essentially completely nullified if your Bitcoin is held by somebody else. That's analogous to having money in the bank. It's essentially the bank's money, and they can kind of give you permission if they see fit to use it. Bitcoin is no different to that. If somebody else holds it, then it's kind of like an IOU, which we'll be talking about later. This is why we've decided to dedicate an entire webinar on the topic of self-custody. So today we'll be discussing what self-custody actually means, why it is so important to leverage all of the great properties that Bitcoin has, and then we'll be demonstrating how you can practice self-custody for yourself using something called a wallet, which again is a terminology that we're all used to using day to day. However, Bitcoin wallets kind of act slightly differently to the wallets that you might have in your pocket right now when you're watching this. So we'll be sort of hopefully dispelling all of the jargon to make you or help you understand that this decentralized technology, or peer-to-peer digital cash, as we keep harping on about, is nowhere near as scary as some of the terminology might make it sound. Is that fair to say, Lily, before I get cracking?
Yeah, definitely. Once you have a handle on self-custody, you'll have a strong handle on Bitcoin.
Yeah, definitely, and it's for, if you spend more than 5 minutes in the Bitcoin space, you'll see or you'll hear all of the true sort of believers. The self custody is they'll say that self custody is absolutely paramount, and hopefully by the end of today you'll all be able to understand where they're coming from and be comfortable enough to put that into practice with the Bitcoin that you own. So we're going to start with the obvious. What is self-custody? So self-custody is essentially means that you holding your Bitcoin and being in absolute control and complete control of where that Bitcoin lives and how you spend that, who you spend that to, and the fact that you do not need any permission to send, 0.5% of your Bitcoin holdings or 100% of your Bitcoin holdings. When you practice self-custody of your Bitcoin in a wallet that you control, again, we're using that terminology wallet, I'm going to pad that out for you later, you are in absolute complete control, which is somewhat of a responsibility shift when we compare it to the modern era, where we have all or most of our money in a bank and the bank looks after it, and the bank kind of takes away that responsibility for us. Unfortunately, whilst they do take away that responsibility, and they're generally speaking pretty good at looking after the physical cash and the money in our bank accounts, you do trade off quite a lot of those properties that we talked about last week in terms of your money in the bank is essentially an IOU, and unfortunately we've seen people with let's say dissenting opinions, or opinions that say the government might disagree with. I'll use again the Canadian truckers as a perfect example of this. Some of those protesters unfortunately had their bank accounts frozen at the click of a button. If you were to if you had some of your wealth saved in Bitcoin and you was practicing self-custody with that, then nobody can do that for you. Nobody can take it away. Nobody can stop you from spending it. It is essentially, it is freedom. And how do we do that? So we do that by holding our Bitcoin in our own wallet, and that comes with, like I said, I touched on it earlier, quite a big responsibility shift. So there are, I think I said this last week, there's no bailouts in Bitcoin. There are no, if you get this wrong, the consequences can be quite significant. So I'm going to use one of the cliche quotes, but with great power comes great responsibility, and self-custody is a great example of that. So why is self-custody critical? So I've kind of already covered off these points, and some of these points will resonate from what we said last week about when we were talking about all of the great properties of Bitcoin, and the fact that it's permissionless, meaning that we can spend it whenever and wherever we want. It's censorship resistant, again, so that we don't have to ask permission for access to our funds, or we don't have to ask for permission to spend our funds to somebody round the corner or somebody on the other side of the planet. If you practice self-custody, Bitcoin, or your Bitcoin, becomes theft resistant. So what do we mean by that? Well, essentially, if you've got Bitcoin in your own wallet, somebody will have to compromise that wallet and to be able to get access to your Bitcoin. So again, it's that self-responsibility or the personal responsibility side of things. Whereas if you're holding your Bitcoin with somebody else, namely, so let's say a regulated exchange, unfortunately, we do see from time to time that these do get compromised. So if all of your Bitcoin is in an account, and I'm using the term your Bitcoin with air quotes here, but if your Bitcoin is in an account on an exchange and they get hacked, then unfortunately you may have done nothing wrong, but unfortunately in that situation your Bitcoin may never reappear again, unfortunately. So how can you practice self-custody? So you can start today with your own wallet. So there are multiple different types of wallet within Bitcoin, and we're going to cover them all off today, and we're going to talk about the pros and cons of them all, how you can get started with each of them, and where might be some recommendations to start out if you're kind of just taking on step one to practice your self-custody. So just a very brief high level. So we've got mobile wallets. Obviously they are wallets or software, pieces of software that live on your mobile phone. We've got desktop wallets. Now I don't really like this terminology much because we don't tend to use the term desktop, but I think a more accurate term would be computer wallets. So again, this is just a piece of software that lives on your computer. So that might be a desktop, but although most of us have laptops these days, so it's like a laptop wallet, if you like, would be a more accurate term. We have Hardware Wallets, which is the foundation, the company that Lily and I work for. We actually make a hardware wallet called Passport. These are generally regarded as much more secure approaches to practicing self-custody, and we'll come on to why that is the case later on. And then we've got single and multi-signature. So these are different security procedures or practices that you can take with any combination of all of these types of wallets, the three above, so mobile, desktop and hardware. At a very high level, the clue is in the name here. Single signature kind of means that you just need one sort of secret, if you like, to sign off on a transaction. So that might be the piece of software on your phone, or it might be a single hardware wallet. Multi-signature, again, it won't take a genius to work out that that means that two or more of a combination of these devices are required to authorize spends. I'm not going to go into any great detail on multi-signature because it's generally regarded as a more advanced topic, and it's kind of outside of the realms of today's webinar. But again, all I will say is that they're generally regarded as like a multi-level security setup for your Bitcoin, where you need two or more pieces of software or two or more devices or a combination of any of those to sign off on any transactions and any spends. And then finally, we have collaborative custody. So people listening to this who've sort of spent more than 5 minutes in the space may be familiar with companies such as Unchained Capital or Casa, and there may be a couple of others that are eluding me at the moment. But these are companies that will kind of offer a helping hand in securing your Bitcoin and practicing self-custody, where they will guide you and they will hold a key in one key out of a possible 3, 5, 7, however many you dictate, so that they can potentially help you in somewhat of a doomsday scenario where you might have lost one of those keys, and they can kind of help you and guide you because they look after one of your keys. Again, that's a little bit outside of the realms of today's talk, but I just wanted to cover it off to say that it is an option, and it's better suited to those with, let's say, larger stacks of Bitcoin. Lily, is anything else I've missed off there? I'm just going to pause just so I can grab a drink.
No, I think you covered everything. I just want to comment that if you choose a collaborative custody solution, you have to be careful from a privacy standpoint because you may give up, you have to give up some of your details to utilize that service. So if you are choosing a collaborative custody solution, make sure that all the information you give them is anonymized. Use an anonymous email, a different name, a pseudonym, because you give them your real information, you're compromising your privacy, which means you're compromising part of the benefits of holding Bitcoin, which is having that private money.
Yeah, exactly. What I will say is that all of these different types of wallet and security setups, they've all got pros and cons, and we're going to get into those in the following slides. So it's not just a case of don't sit here listening to this thinking I need to choose one of these. You could use a combination of multiple ones of these to store different pieces of Bitcoin for different purposes. Again, I'm going to come into that in a second, but yeah, this doesn't have to be a binary selection. You can deploy one or all of these if you wanted to, depending on your personal circumstances and what you kind of need to get out of your self-custody journey. So, this is a terminology that I've used repeatedly this morning. What is a wallet? So a wallet is where we store the access to our Bitcoin. Now that might sound like a bit of a peculiar phrase for me to say. It's where we store the access to it, but hopefully by the time I get to the end of this slide that will become clear. So when you have a wallet in any form, so software, hardware, desktop, all of the ones I've just covered off, there is no actual physical Bitcoin inside that wallet. It's just a piece of software or hardware. The Bitcoin exists on the public blockchain. I'm sure we've all heard that terminology, the blockchain. So the Bitcoin never actually leaves there. It's just the blockchain is the public ledger of all of the transactions that ever happened and who owns what. So it will say, Q&A has 0.7352 Bitcoin, Lily has 0.1247 Bitcoin, etc. And anybody who owns some Bitcoin will have an entry on that public ledger. That's where they stay. And anytime there is a transaction made, it will send from address A to address B, and that will be recorded and everybody can see that. So if you want to spend, you have to prove ownership, much like you would if you spend with your credit card, you might need to sign a piece of paper and that will be compared with the signature on your card. It's the same principle. You have to prove that is your card and you have the right to spend it. Bitcoin is no different. So as I just said, to prove that ownership and that Bitcoin is yours, you have to provide a digital signature this time. Obviously, Bitcoin is digital cash. So how do we provide that digital signature? So we do that with a digital key. Now, all of this might sound quite scary. Fortunately, all of the wallets today, be they hardware or software, completely obfuscate all of the need for you to do any physical signing or manage any keys. It's all obfuscated away from you. I'm just trying to help you understand where the Bitcoin lives and how, when you have a wallet, what is actually inside that. So we sign with a digital key. Essentially, when we do that, all we're doing in the application is just pressing send. So when we have a wallet, it holds and manages these digital keys on our behalf, all automatically managed for us and be put behind a nice shiny user interface that's really approachable in most cases. So what a wallet essentially is a key manager that allows you to prove that you own the Bitcoin that you're trying to spend. Now that's quite can be a complex topic to wrap your head around when you're used to kind of just typical credit cards and physical cash. But I hope that's kind of makes sense that when we hit spend with a Bitcoin wallet, all we're doing is we're proving that we have the right to spend that Bitcoin to everybody else, and especially to the person who's receiving it. So there is some more wallet jargon that is worth briefly covering off before I give you a little bit of a demonstration of what it looks like to set up a phone wallet. So we've got the top two there, private key and seed words. Now these are generally used synonymously with one another, and generally speaking, they tend to mean the same thing at a high level. So your seed words are kind of like the master password to your Bitcoin. So when you set up a wallet, again, I'm going to show you this in a second, you will be given some seed words. That will be essentially just a list of 12 or 24 words. And the way you can look at these is essentially like the PIN code to your debit or credit card. Anybody that has your card and has your PIN code can go and spend your money. While with Bitcoin, anybody that has access to your seed words can go and spend your Bitcoin. So essentially what you need to look at these seed words or the private key, that again, the words are used synonymously, is the master backup, and it's something that you must keep private and super secure. A passphrase is an optional layer that you can add on top of that, kind of like a second factor authentication. So you could have your list of 12 words and a passphrase, and you can kind of think of it like a password as like an extra level of protection to your Bitcoin. You don't have to use a passphrase, and they do tend to be sort of more of an intermediate thing, but it is a terminology that you will see in quite a lot of wallets these days. So I just wanted to mention what it is and how you would use that. An address is where, if you were sending a Bitcoin transaction, you would send that to an address. Most of the time you would see that in the form of a QR code. I'm sure we've all seen QR codes dotted around around the world, and they generally, it's just a quick scan, and it sort of resolves to, in this case, a Bitcoin address, which is kind of like a long string of numbers and letters that belongs to somebody's wallet. And when you send Bitcoin to that address, the Bitcoin lands in the new owner's wallet, and then they can go and spend that to whoever they see fit. Tor, again, is probably a terminology that most people would have heard these days. It stands for the Onion Router, and it's just a privacy-based network that a lot of modern wallets today use to communicate to the Bitcoin network and to the various nodes or computers running in that network. If you use a wallet that has Tor, generally speaking, it's enabled by default. You don't have to do anything extra. It's just kind of a good default level of privacy to protect you from a network level perspective, should I say. Confirmation. So a confirmation is essentially where your Bitcoin transaction, if you're doing a send or a receive, it has if something has one confirmation, that means that it's been confirmed into the blockchain. It's kind of finalized, if you like. Some wallets do show the number of confirmations. So if you look at your receive screen in your Bitcoin wallet and you see that your recent transaction has 7 confirmations, that just means that there have been 7 blocks confirmed on top of when that transaction was received. And you can look at the more confirmations as the more final that transaction is. Generally speaking today, after 1 or 2 confirmations, which normally happens in around 10 or 20 minutes on average, you can look at that transaction as absolutely final and that it cannot be rolled back or reversed. And finally, sats. So this is a terminology or a piece of terminology for a unit of Bitcoin. Sat is short for Satoshi, which is the smallest denomination of Bitcoin possible today. And there are 100 million sats or Satoshis in each Bitcoin. So it's just kind of, so rather than having to say, can you send me 0.0001 Bitcoin? You could say, oh, actually, can you send me 100,000 sats? It just kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit easier. And I'm really happy to say that it is growing in adoption. I'm a big fan of the term sats. And I think it also helps with the unit bias of somebody looking at Bitcoin and thinking, oh my God, 1 Bitcoin is a lot of money. Well, you can just say, well, why not just send me 100,000 sats or 10,000 sats? It's just a more approachable piece of terminology, in my opinion. Lily, anything to add there?
Nope, you covered it.
I was just pausing for a drink, really. I was just hoping you could fill for 30 seconds, but I've got one now. We're all good. I'm going to move on. Okay, so we are back to the types of wallets. So we're going to start off with the easiest and the most approachable and the way that most people get into Bitcoin, and that is with a mobile wallet. So just a quick reminder, a mobile wallet is just an application or a piece of software that runs on your phone. Generally speaking, these are all free. We live in a mobile first world, so most people are going to be fairly familiar with downloading an application on a phone. A Bitcoin wallet or mobile wallet is no different. You can download it from the App Store, generally speaking, although there are different methods where you can obtain them slightly more privately depending on the wallet software as well. Mobile wallets offer really quick starts. I'm going to demonstrate that in a second. You can literally get started with an application called Blue Wallet in like 4 steps, and you can have your own Bitcoin wallet and practice self-custody, as I say, in 4 steps. I would say you should treat mobile wallets as you would physical cash in your wallet. That is to say that it's more suitable for on-the-go spends. If you've got a significant portion of your life savings in Bitcoin, you generally wouldn't want to have that just in an application on your phone, because it's ultimately what we call in the industry as a hot wallet. That is that it's on a device that is connected to the internet, which brings with it, unfortunately, some, albeit they are quite small today, most phones are fairly secure. Just the fact that the very nature that it is connected to the internet poses some potential risk. If you were to click the wrong link, who knows what somebody might be able to do to get into your phone and access that Bitcoin. Again, that sounds like scaremongering, and that does not happen very often, but it's just good practice to keep just smaller amounts, as you would, like you say, physical cash in your wallet. And because Bitcoin's sort of getting on for 13 years old now, the beautiful thing about mobile wallets is that there is loads of really good ones out there these days. So if you're looking for a privacy focused wallet, there's one out there for you. If you're looking for a really simple one to get started with, there's loads of those as well. I'm going to demonstrate one of those in a second. And there are also some mobile wallets that offer a functionality called the Lightning Network, which again is outside of the scope of today's webinar. All I'll say is it's a scaling solution on Bitcoin that allows for cheap and smaller payments that generally confirm much faster than they do when you use Bitcoin in a typical fashion, or as we would say, on-chain. So I think that may be one for a future, or maybe some homework for people watching this. But yeah, once you've sort of listened or watched through all of these 4 webinars, you might want to look into the Lightning Network as you become more of an intermediate or an advanced Bitcoiner. So that was mobile wallets. So on the right hand side of the screen, you'll see a phone with Blue Wallet installed on it, and I'm just going to show you how simple it is just to get started with self-custody with Blue Wallet, which is an application that runs on your phone. So you would just go onto the App Store or the Play Store, depending on if you're on Apple or Android. Type in Blue Wallet and download that app onto your phone as you would any other application, be that a game, a banking app, whatever it is. So when you open Blue Wallet, you'll be met with this screen, and in big blue letters there it says Add New Wallet. So you click Add New Wallet. All you need to do, right, is give the wallet a name. So you can call it, My First Mobile Wallet, or Lily's Hot Wallet, Lily's spending funds, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of other options there. You don't need to touch any of them. You can literally just press create. So all we've done so far is given it a name and we've pressed create. Now here are those all important seed words that I was talking about earlier. These are the master backup to your Bitcoin, and these need to be written down on a piece of paper, at least in the short term, as these are, like I say, your master backup, and you'll have to confirm that you've written these down. So when you are doing this, just make sure that you do this slowly, in a quiet room, somewhere that you can focus, because you need to make sure you note these words down correctly and in the correct order. And that's it. You've just created your own Bitcoin wallet and you're ready to practice self-custody in 3 or 4 steps. Really simple. So once we've got to this stage, you might be thinking, well, how can I receive some Bitcoin? I've got my own wallet now. Great. That was really easy. So all we need to do is tap on the wallet, hit receive, and there we have a QR code, and we also have the long string of letters and numbers that I referred to earlier. That is the Bitcoin address. These are essentially the same thing. They're just different methods of showing it. One's text and one's a QR code. So you would share that then with whoever wants to send you Bitcoin, and that would show up almost immediately to say, so-and-so sent you some Bitcoin. And I don't know if it's coming through on the screen there, but I was talking about confirmations earlier. You'll see there, Blue Wallet does show you that. So that means that there's been 6 blocks mined on top of this after this transaction was processed. So we've received some Bitcoin into our own wallet. Now we're going to do something slightly what might seem reckless. We're going to delete the wallet, and that will become clear as to why I'm going to do that in a second. So we've just to recap, we've set up our own wallet, we've sent some Bitcoin in. When we were setting up the wallet, we wrote down 12 words. These 12 words are our master backup, and we must keep those safe. Now we're going to delete the wallet. So we've deleted the wallet. Now we're going to practice and make sure that we wrote those words down correctly. So we're going to click on Import Wallet. We're going to populate those 12 words that we wrote down just a couple of minutes earlier. And then we're going to press Import. And if we input them incorrectly, our Bitcoin is recovered and we can see our transactions again. So the reason I did those final steps was just to demonstrate the power of those seed words, those 12 words, or it could be 24 depending on the wallet software that you choose. Just to demonstrate the power of those words and the fact that if you were to lose your phone, then as long as you've got those 12 words, you could pop those into another piece of software. It could be 10 minutes later, it could be 10 years later. As long as you pop those into a compatible piece of software, which 99.9% of the apps out today are, then you can recover your Bitcoin. The crucial bit is those seed words and that you keep them safe. So we've covered off mobile wallets and seen how simple it is to get started. Another generally pretty easy way to get started with Bitcoin is a desktop wallet or a laptop wallet, whatever you want to call it. It's a piece of software that you run on your computer. Again, most of these are free. By design, these are also hot wallets. They're on your laptop, which is connected to the internet. The difference here, unfortunately, is that generally speaking, most people are not as good at protecting their computers from malware or bugs. I'm sure everybody watching this has at some point had some bugs on their computer. So yeah, it's the same risks that we talked about with mobile wallets, with having managing how much you keep on a desktop wallet should be taken into account here as well, just because of that hot wallet risk. So some desktop wallets can feel less familiar to beginners. Generally speaking, most people today are more comfortable with applications on their phone than they are installing software on their computer, and that's for good reason. Obviously, as desktop wallets or laptop wallets live on a computer, they're not well suited to on-the-go spend. You wouldn't want to take your laptop to the counter in Starbucks and try and order a coffee. That wouldn't be very user-friendly. And finally, desktop wallets can be used in conjunction with hardware wallets. I'm just going to pause because somebody said they can't see my screen. Lily, can you see my screen?
Oh, you're back, Q&A.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, apologies. Once again, the technology gods are not on my side today. So where did you hear up to before I disconnected again? Sorry about that.
You were talking about the desktop wallets, and you said, it's harder to secure a computer than it is to secure a mobile device.
Yeah, okay. So, and of course, because of their nature that they're on a computer, they are not great for on-the-go spends. I've just realised that I need to share my screen again. Oh, you got it, Lily, yeah?
Yeah, I got you.
Perfect. So because they're on your computer, they're not well suited to on-the-go spends. You wouldn't want to take your laptop to the counter in a coffee shop to try and pay for some Bitcoin. That might look a bit silly. And finally, desktop wallets can be used in conjunction with hardware wallets. So we can actually use a desktop wallet as like a coordinator or an interface so that we can interact with the more secure method of storing Bitcoin, which is a hardware wallet. I'm going to come on to that slightly more in just a second. And when we use that combination of a hardware wallet paired with a desktop or laptop wallet, we can... it's a really great environment for coordinating what we call multi-sig wallets, which I touched on earlier, where we have multiple keys that are required to authorize any spend transactions. So I'll move on to the next slide, Lily. That brings us on to hardware wallets. So hardware wallets are single-purpose key managers. So they are a device that operates wholly offline. They have generally speaking, they have no Bluetooth. They definitely don't have any internet connection. Some of them don't even have ports that you can kind of plug in. They may run off AAA batteries. And all of that is designed to provide a really secure method for you to store those private keys, or as we touched on earlier, those seed words. The very nature of the fact that they physically cannot, generally speaking, connect to the internet makes them a much more secure method of storing Bitcoin. Because they are not connected to the internet, obviously they have much fewer attack vectors, and generally speaking, hardware wallets are are well suited to storing larger amounts of Bitcoin, so that they can be kept wholly offline and just be used to authorize spend transactions from when you may want to spend from, let's say, your Bitcoin savings account. Hardware wallets, obviously, as they have no internet connection or generally speaking, not much connectivity, they will communicate with a piece of wallet software that will kind of allow them to communicate to the Bitcoin network. That can be either a mobile application, if it has that functionality, or it can be a desktop wallet that will be, like I say, they will be able to manage the transactions. When we use this combination of a phone wallet paired with a hardware wallet, or a desktop wallet paired with a hardware wallet, the nature of the fact that the private keys or the seed words never leave the offline hardware wallet means that the internet connected to that device, the phone or the laptop, cannot spend any of the funds that are controlled by the hardware wallet. So it's that extra level of security that, even if, you could have a really great hardware wallet that, I'm going to hold the hands up and be honest and say we at Foundation make one of the best. You could have your Bitcoin private key stored on a passport that you can see on the screen there, and have that paired with the desktop wallet that is on a computer that is absolutely riddled with bugs and malware. But because of the authority to the authority required to sign off on any spends lives on the hardware wallet. No matter what happens on that computer, it can't sort of steal your Bitcoin. So this is where we get the extra level of security that hardware wallets can offer. And again, touched on it earlier, you can pair multiple hardware wallets into a multi-sig wallet. So you could have 2 or 3 passports and say that 2 passports from a possible 3 that I own are required to authorize on any spends, which again just raises the bar to somebody that wants to attack you or steal your Bitcoin. Not only do they have to compromise you, they also have to compromise 2 out of the 3 devices that you own if they can find them and break into them. So it just adds that extra level of security that almost makes somebody trying to steal your Bitcoin absolutely impossible for all intents and purposes. Yeah, just going to quickly cover off multi-signature. I think I've probably covered most of these points already. So yeah, it's where we require multiple signatures from a possible quorum of keys. This makes attacks much more difficult, and the number of different configurations that you can have are almost limitless. You could have 1 from a possible 2, 3 from a possible 5, 11 from a possible 15. The world is your oyster really, and obviously each of those different configurations will be better suited to an individual or a business, and there's different applications that will benefit from different multi-sig configurations. Of course, with every added key and piece of software that you have to interact with, that makes it adds a lot more complexity. So multi-signature is absolutely not for beginners, but it is really great for when we get into some sort of enterprise or business level that might want to spread their risk and their responsibility, where they can share a key each amongst their key stakeholders or shareholders, if you like. Okay, so we have wallet backups next. So we demonstrated earlier when we did the setup with Blue Wallet the power of a wallet backup and how at a very high level that works. I just want to drive home really that the importance of your Bitcoin backup or your seed words that you can see on screen there. There's an example of a 12-word seed. These seed words all abide by a common standard which is called BIP39. Now you don't need to understand what BIP39 is. All you need to know is that is the common standard, so that if I were to download Blue Wallet and go through the process that I demonstrated earlier, and then Blue Wallet was to disappear off the face of the earth in 5 years' time, you would be able to know that the 12 words that you wrote down all those years ago could be input into any compatible wallet that adopts this BIP39 standard. Again, almost all of them do, and be able to restore access to your Bitcoin. So just know that there is a common standard, and that takes the form of these seed words. Of course, again, just want to drive home that these seed words are your Bitcoin. So if you write them on a piece of paper, send a load of Bitcoin into that wallet, and leave that piece of paper on your desk, and somebody walks into your house and sees these words on your desk, they could easily just pop that into a piece of software on their phone or on a hardware wallet or anywhere and access all of your Bitcoin. So these seed words should be treated with the utmost respect and the utmost security as well. So they need to be safe from theft, and they also need to be safe from different sort of types of disaster scenarios, so fire, crushing, water, etc., etc. And we'll come on to the different methods of that in a second. So backup methods. So how can you back up these seed words? So the obvious is to write it down on paper, but of course paper burns, it gets wet, it dissolves, so it's not great to stand the test of time. We do have steel backups, so you can see on screen there's like a plate shape where you can kind of stamp or etch these seed words into metal, which is kind of fast becoming one of the most common ways to store your Bitcoin for the long term. So you would just buy one of these steel plates that is resistant to extreme heat, extreme pressure, extreme crushing forces, etc., and you can store that somewhere safe. One thing to note here is that, of course, these backups are generally in plain text, so it might be able to withstand a 1,000,000-degree fire, but if somebody was to pick it up from the drawer in your office, and they knew what it was, then they can still steal your Bitcoin. We have encrypted SD card backups. So I'm sure you've all seen an SD card that you put into your computer or a digital camera, etc., etc. So certain hardware wallets, Passport is one of them, allow you to input a micro SD card and encrypt the seed words onto the micro SD card. So the benefits of a micro SD card, obviously, they're pretty, run-of-the-mill items that you would expect to see in somebody's house or in somebody's drawer, and generally speaking, most people won't bat an eyelid if they just see an SD card in a drawer or in a safe somewhere. The key here is the encrypted bit. So most of the hardware wallets that offer this functionality will encrypt the seed with some form of password. Obviously, that password is something else that you need to keep safe. But you could, as an example, if you were to write that password down in a notebook and put that in a safe, then anybody that stored that password will have to know what the password is for and then find that SD card and put the two together to be able to access your Bitcoin. So there is that extra level of security offered. Of course, SD cards are not fire resistant and they're not water resistant. So you're probably fast realizing here that maybe just one of these approaches might not be the best, and you can absolutely deploy multiple ones of these. Just be careful of course, where you keep them. Multi-location is a good idea, providing that you're confident of the security of each of those locations. There is also obviously what we call a brain wallet, or essentially just memorizing your seed words. Now, I wouldn't recommend this to anybody. I know some people that do deploy this method, admittedly not as their only form of backup. Obviously, something in your head is extremely resistant to, fire, theft, etc., especially theft. But, we're humans, we are fallible, and a simple knock on the head might mean the difference between, you being able to pass on your Bitcoin wealth to your heirs and not being able to, unfortunately. So again, I think a multitude of these approaches is probably a good idea, but of course it's a very situational thing, and it's very much a personal thing in terms of what locations you have available to you, what your threat models are in terms of do you live in a secure area, are you comfortable with something just in your drawer, or do you need to keep these in multiple locations and keep them under lock and key and encrypt them, etc., etc. So what I would say is just try out the different methods and see which ones work for you. And of course, in big bold letters at the bottom, anybody that has access to your Bitcoin, to your backup, has access to your Bitcoin. So especially if these are kept in clear text on paper or metal, I'll say it again, keep them safe. Anybody that finds this could steal your Bitcoin, so keep it very safe. So how do we restore from a backup? So I demonstrated this very quickly with Blue Wallet. I'm just going to reiterate the point because it demonstrates the power of these seed words. I'm just going to very quickly gloss over it. So let's say we have a mobile wallet on our phone and we lose that phone. So long as we have those seed words backed up in any of the methods that we've described in the previous slide, we would just obtain that backup. So let's say we grab our steel plate from the safe in our house. All we need to do then is, obviously we'll need to buy a new phone because we lost it or it was stolen. Download any compatible app and insert those seed words, and that restores access to your Bitcoin. Again, I'm sort of repeating myself here, but any wallet that is compliant with BIP39, you can pop those seed words in and restore the access to your Bitcoin. If if specified and you have used the passphrase, then this is also required for your recovery. So if you've got your seed words and you've applied a passphrase to it, it's not enough to just have your seed words. If you don't remember or you can't find your passphrase, you will have lost access to your Bitcoin as well. So passphrases are great second factor authentications, but if you lose that second factor authentication, you lose access to your Bitcoin. So I would say just tread carefully with that one. Like I said before, it is somewhat of an intermediate approach to your Bitcoin security, but definitely a great option worth exploring as you get a bit more comfortable. I think that wraps it up, Lily. Is there any points on the final couple of slides that I missed off, or any comments that you wanted to make before I open up to the floor if there are any questions?
I just wanted to draw attention to recent events that have been a huge advertisement for self-custody. Like, I'm sure you guys have been following the news about Celsius. As Celsius froze their withdrawals, meaning that the people who had their Bitcoin stored with them, they can't access it anymore. It's unknown whether or not those people will ever get access to that Bitcoin again, because the way Celsius works is they take your funds and they use it to buy other assets that give you yield on that Bitcoin. But given that the market's corrected so far, I don't think Celsius has the reserves to return that Bitcoin to everybody. Binance, the big crypto exchange, also froze withdrawals temporarily, which means that locks people out from getting their funds. So I think we're going to see a lot more of this. We're going to see a lot of different types of, whether that be protocols or custodians, I guess, pull a Celsius and freeze people's assets. And I guess it's really important to remember that if you're not holding your Bitcoin and it's not yours, it's basically collateral for the custodian to use as they see fit. You're acting as a lender for them. Another thing to point out is even exchanges that have good intentions, they're still going to be required to comply with the law if they're ever required to freeze assets. There was a comment made by Kraken CEO Jesse Powell where he said, in an event that law comes out saying they have to freeze assets or they have to block withdrawals, Kraken will have to comply. So his recommendation was, if you don't want to take that risk, you should pull your assets off of Kraken and into your own wallet.
Yeah, some great valid points there, and really drives home the importance of holding your own keys. And anybody that was a customer of these various companies that you just mentioned, at the turn of a hat, had the access to their Bitcoin removed. Obviously, with the Celsius thing, that might be a permanent thing. Unfortunately, I'm sad to say. Thankfully, with the Binance situation, it was just temporary. But it just demonstrates the point that the whole point of Bitcoin and being able to spend without trusted third parties to whoever, whenever you want, is only applicable if you are holding your own keys. Then that gives you the freedom to transact and save with whoever, whenever you want. So really some really great points to drive that home. And I think that probably wraps it up. I'm not seeing any questions pop up, so I will thank you for joining me, Lily, and probably just hand over quickly to Slim if he's still here to say any final words. And failing that, we will see you all for next week's webinar.
Yeah, Lily, thank you so much. This is really, I think this is education right now at this point in time. How we're moving forward with the initiative is very key. I'm going to, this is going to be very good content that we'll be able to share. I think getting these basics of understanding really opens up the minds to a lot of people that might be a little bit intimidated and really don't know where to start. So thank you for your approach on this. I know that we'll grow in numbers. Quality is there right now, and much thanks and appreciation, guys.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.